Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And today we're talking about Notorious.
The brand new 4K restoration of Notorious.
That I think is being shown as part of a Cary Grant retrospective season.
It's being shown as part of a Cary Grant retrospective season in London at the NFT. But it's also part of the new Criterion release. So it's a joint collaboration. I mean, the restoration is a joint collaboration with Criterion.
But this is now going around the country. It has been in August, I think.
And it's so worth seeing on a big screen. I think some of the scenes are so impactful. Some of the close-ups, really have a physical effect on you in a way that they just would not on a television. It's
built so much around close-ups. Which is not to say there aren't other types of shot that are impressive or notable, but so much of it is around close-up and two shots as well, or actually kind of two shots that function as close-ups, yes, because there's so much of people's faces in close proximity. And I think the beauty in those is not in the composition, it's in the lighting and the hairdressing and the makeup and the clothing and the set dressing.
And the actors.
Yeah.
I mean, but there is a great deal of thought. I mean, that moment when Ingrid Bergman has been poisoned and Cary Grant appears to rescue her and they're on her bed, she's on her bed, and it's these extreme close-up two-shot of the two of them together, and they speak in like these hushed tones, right? It's kind of, which is I think I always associate that with the 40s. 40s cinema has a whispering quality. It's like this kind of intimacy, dreamlike thing. And actually, to me, it had this odd effect of, it's almost like the mise en scène is evoking or inciting in me a feeling of, when you just wake up and you're just like, kind of, you don't want to get out of bed, right? And it's warm and nice, and yeah.
Well, that's certainly what Ingrid Bergman brings to it towards the end, because that's sort of her performance style.
I know, but I think it's also in the way of filming and the lighting and the speaking, in the extreme close-up nature of her face and her voice, and actually how often Cary Grant's face is foregrounded, and you see, I mean, he's got eyelashes longer than hers, right, and kind of hooded, right, like. It's very beautiful, and like, my God, she is so incredibly beautiful. She's got this extraordinary luminosity, this beautiful skin, yeah, kind of. But I think that would not have an effect if the camera would have been 1 inch further away from them. I mean, it is also something that's very much composed and lit and so on.
Yeah. So it's a film about, I mean, in case you haven't seen it.
Yes, let's backtrack a bit.
It's a spy film, and to an extent a film noir, I'd say.
Yes.
About two men in love with Ingrid Bergman. She is the daughter of a German man who's just been convicted of something in America.
Yes.
I thought that.
Let me kind of just interject here a little bit, because I mean, I think to me it's a spy story, basically, right? And it's a spy story that has very dark elements. So basically, what happens is Ingrid Bergman's father, the character that Ingrid Bergman plays, her father in the film is a Nazi spy. He's indicted, he commits suicide.
Set in 1946.
Yeah, and she...
which indeed is when it's made and released, so...
Yes. So, and she's notorious because of her connection to this Nazi.
You could also say she's notorious because she has a party girl sort of reputation, which is what the American agents talk about, and one of the reasons that they find her useful.
Yes.
In Brazil.
Well, yes, she's a party girl. I mean, this film is almost unthinkable in 1946 America without the casting of Ingrid Bergman, who always had associations of health and, a kind of a spiritual, virginal quality, maybe, from her nun films. Because what she plays here basically is like a promiscuous woman, who is a drunk, who is enticed or maybe tricked or, manipulated perhaps by Cary Grant into basically becoming a prostitute for the American government in Rio, so that they can unmask this Nazi spy ring, that is...
well, it's very vague what these guys are actually up to. There's something involving uranium, they find out, but it is really left at that.
Well, it's not vague in context. It's the year after Hiroshima, right? So, kind of, they have this... I mean, it's not made explicit and it's not very clear, and I'm not sure people knew the science then, right? But the connotations are, that they have materials that you need to, develop this weaponry. That's kind of, I'm sure, what was it in everybody's mind. And so Ingrid's job is to spy on them and inform the American government, of what they're doing. And I think the Nazi aspects are very clear, really. They're all German. There's a wonderful series of shots of, extreme close-ups again that really distort the faces when Ingrid Bergman or Alicia is introduced to all of... What's Claude Rains' character's name in the film?
Sebastian. Alex Sebastian.
So to all of Sebastian's friends, right? And the way they're chosen, they're all blonde and blue-eyed and like really Aryan, except for a little fat guy that gets killed immediately. Hop.
Yeah, he actually looks pretty Jewish.
Yes.
Yeah, and he gets killed for doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
For just he sees a bottle of champagne that you later learn he recognises as
the place with the uranium.
He's like, "What are we drinking uranium?" He must be saying, and he gets taken away and killed for that. And well, there's something that I wanted to bring up, which is kind of interesting about Claude Rains' character, right? So he's the one who this Alex Sebastian, who was previously in love with Ingrid Bergman years ago. They obviously know each other through her father, and then they use her. The American agents use her to seduce him, basically get into his life. He actually ends up marrying her, and he's clearly a kind of a baddie. But that's not really the stuff that he's doing with the Nazis is left pretty vague. As you say, it has these clear sort of connotations with the uranium of nuclear armament, whatever. But actually, those details are just left as...
They're not necessary. It's almost like a MacGuffin, yeah.
Right, exactly. Right. His story is actually this love story,
Yes.
this love triangle story between him, Cary Grant, and Ingrid Bergman. And I don't know about you, but right at the end of the film, I was left feeling very... I have seen it before, but not since university. I was left feeling really sympathetic towards him because of what's going to happen to him.
Oh, I always feel sympathetic to Sebastian because, I mean... and that's the wonderful thing about, well, both Claude Rains, the actor, and also Hitchcock. I mean, it's a character with great depth and nuance, right? You do, in many ways, see how kind and good he is, and he's truly in love with her, which redeems him, But his fate is left completely out of his hands at the end. When he goes back inside, they call him in. All the context he'd been given. Look what happened to, I think Emil, his name was. Yeah,
the guy who got killed. Look what happened to him. This is going to happen to me. He's terrified, absolutely terrified, and that act of locking the door, not letting him in, actually is very cruel.
Well, it's the equivalent of killing him, right?
It is.
Yeah.
And they smirk in the car.
Yeah.
Ingrid Bergman certainly does.
Yeah.
She smiles, and that's it. Actually seems quite cruel of her.
I didn't find it that way. I mean, bloody hell, the guy's been poisoning her cold-bloodedly, for the last week, and, in this drawn-out way where she's delivering. So I didn't feel any of what you felt in that. But I do think that for most of the film, you feel quite warmly towards him. I mean, and actually that is because he is a man truly in love. And actually you suspect that he loves her more, than Cary Grant, right? Who is clearly using her at the beginning. They both get a wonderful introduction, Ingrid Bergman, after, Hitchcock does this marvelous establishing thing where you're seeing the inside of a court ruling, but you're seeing it from outside, and you only see the man's back, right, as the judge gives sentence. And then the sentence is given, and then kind of Ingrid Bergman appears through, walking through, all of these photographers and reporters and people asking her questions. And then Cary Grant gets a fantastic intro where you have repeated shots of his back.
Well, it's one long take. It's a one-er, that shot in part, sort of get together after the trial.
Is it? Because I think
it is, yeah. And then the camera ends up close up on his head, and then there's a fade. There's a fade to another shot, and the camera comes around his head, and then you see his face for the first time.
Well, the thing is, my impression was that you saw the back of his head several times before you saw his face.
You see it throughout that shot, really. It's always there in the bottom left of the frame, and sometimes your attention is drawn to it when Ingrid Bergman goes over to him, and who brought you? The other woman says, "Oh, he came with me," something like that. So your attention is drawn to him, but it is all done in one take, I think. That
okay, yeah, I didn't notice that. What I did notice is that you see the back of his head, Ingrid's talking, and then you see the back of his head, and then of course you're waiting for the reveal, which is which is going to be Cary Grant. Because actually, just the outline of his head, right? Like, it has a sharpness. Actually, one of the things that I love, there's a tiny little moment in this film where Cary Grant is discussing the case, and it's almost like he's got one foot on the floor, and then another foot with the toes pointing towards the carpet, and then he changes stance, and he's just like, with feet wide apart, and just kind of standing very still. And just the grace of the movement from, one to the other is just like so beautiful.
I don't recall that shot in particular, but I do recall the shot after she's discovered that he's an American agent, and she wakes up in bed, and he's stood there leaning against the door frame, and it's at that Dutch angle, from her point of view, and he's just this thin rake of pure blackness in his suit, and he's standing in that sort of 1 foot up, 1 foot down, sort of crooked cocked heel, whatever, and he just looks incredible, cool, handsome, sexy.
He is incredible. He's incredible looking, but actually, he's got this incredible grace with his body, and he does kind of very interesting and unusual things with it. It's very arresting. But what you were saying about that shot, I mean, the film is full of things that I just find him gobsmacking, really.
What's really struck me, actually, was his facial acting more than his physical acting. And I suppose this is partly because, again, the film is so heavily built around these close-ups, but there's so much that he communicates through, like a narrowing of his eyes, or kind of stiffening of his lips, or just a change in way he's looking. He communicates so much in these tiny little gestures, mean so much, that I think you're always aware of what he's thinking.
Well, yes, I mean, he's a great actor.
Even when what he's thinking is kind of quite complex, like exactly what his character thinks about something that someone has said.
Yes.
And how you understand the information he knows, you understand what his point of view on people is, and then what he does with his face, kind of, it adds up perfectly. I really love what he does.
It's quite a dark character, right? Like, that he plays. And actually, this is a nice balance. It's very interesting because this is a film in which the good guy spy hero is given all shades of grey and blackness and all these dark qualities. He's manipulative, he's kind of sexually controlling. He puts out, this woman whom, she's fallen in love with him, and you suspect he's fallen for her as well, and he basically puts her out to be a prostitute, so it's a very dark character.
Yeah, well, there's in that famous shot where for 2.5 minutes they kiss on and off because of the 3 seconds they were only allowed to kiss for 3 seconds. That's how Hitchcock famously got around it, was having them kind of kiss and nuzzle and kiss and nuzzle. Ingrid Bergman has a line about, it's a funny sort of love, this, and he says, "How do you mean?" And she says, "Well, you don't love me back," something like that. And he says something like, "When I stop loving you, I'll tell you." Which is not the same as saying "I love you," which he only does right at the end to keep her awake, basically. And I think he means it too. But it is a controlling sort of behaviour. That he allows her to think certain things. He allows her to believe certain things. And he doesn't commit to what he's doing. Well, and I don't think it's about I don't think it's a self-protection thing, kind of knowing or having an idea of what he'll need to do. I think it is a kind of personal, comes across to me at least as a kind of personal controlling thing that he's doing.
Well,
not letting himself.
He is a spy. he's somebody who organizes, cases and that involve kind of international espionage, right? So he is somebody who plays his moves like a master chess player, so that he's always got that kind of control, and he doesn't spill, his thoughts, whereas she does at all moments, really, right? So, and also so she's the one who's meant to be the notorious playgirl, whatever. Yeah, but she comes across as kind of pure in some ways, and that might just be the qualities that Ingrid Bergman brings to it. Whereas, he is the hero and he is the good guy, and yet what he evokes is all kinds of darkness, really.
I think she's not a liar. Her character isn't a liar. I think she's honest with herself and with other people, apart from the fact that she is spying on
she marries
her husband.
Claude Rains.
But she's not sort of instinctively a liar, I don't think. That's not who she is. Whereas I think Cary Grant's character comes across more as someone who can live through lies.
Well, I'm not sure if I would put it exactly that way, because actually we also never see him telling a lie. Insofar as I can remember.
That maybe is a bit harsh, but certainly in the way he plays his cards close to his chest, at least.
I know what you mean, because the thing is, he's a very dark character. He's controlling. He is not kind of expressive of... He's very expressive of his thoughts to the audience, but not to the other characters in the drama, right? He's very kind of withholding. And so, and also you see... also contextually, he's a man who's probably... The character has been in a war. It's 1946. Probably seen a lot. He is he is that kind of character who's like, kind of chasing conspiracies and so on. So both the character and the way that Cary Grant plays them and the way that Hitchcock films them is one that has a lot of darkness about him. Layers of darkness. So, and I think that's a nice contrast with Claude Rains, who you think should have all those layers of darkness, because after all, he is a Nazi who is like, blah blah blah, and part of like this international illegal,
very English Nazi.
Very English Nazi, yes.
It does sort of strike you the whole way through that his mum is clearly German,
yeah.
and he's supposed to be a German Nazi, but he...
Yes, I don't think anybody
comes
cares.
from London.
I don't think anybody cares about that.
I know.
And also, I think people in those days didn't care either, because, East Coast Americans, rich Americans, always sounded like that anyway. So, if you listen to Katharine Hepburn talk, or, it's not... also, the sense of Americanness is much more inclusive. So, kind of, accent is a thing that tends to bother English people much more than anyone else.
Well, I don't say it bothers me. It's just kind of funny. So there's no effort.
No, but
they didn't say
to you, it's noticeable and an issue.
It wasn't an issue. I just noticed it.
Whereas, I think kind of, to audiences, in Canada, for example, or in the US, it just wouldn't be an issue. Kind of Ingrid Bergman talks the way that she talks because she's Ingrid Bergman and she's a big star and nobody cares, and you don't have to justify that she's Swedish or whatever. You don't.
Yeah.
So and Cary Grant speaks the way Cary Grant speaks, and and he plays every American role there is, but he clearly doesn't speak like most other Americans.
But they didn't let the other Nazis play with English or American accents. They're all Germans.
Yes.
At least they have funny accents.
Well, maybe, yeah.
It's just because he's Claude Rains. He can do Claude Rains.
Well, he is also a star, for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, the film has some incredible shots. Like, the ball sequence is fantastic. The descent into the cellar with the key is fantastic. That when they're poisoning her, the way that coffee cup takes up 3/4 of the screen practically, is fantastic.
The ballroom shot you're thinking of, I think, is that fantastic boom shot that starts from up on high on the balcony and just descends and descends. It's like that shot in The Conversation.
Yes.
Descends and descends and descends until it ends up with this extreme close up on the key in her hand.
That's right.
Fantastic, audacious sort of shot.
It's amazing. I think the film is amazing. Actually, I came out of it because I was completely riveted throughout. I mean, all the things that you're meant to be tense and anxious about, it all worked on me, kind of, once again. And there were things that I wanted to explore and investigate, afterwards. Yeah. So, I mean, I have not seen Notorious since I was a teenager. Even, as a film person, I just didn't get around to it really. I spent a whole summer going through Hitchcock films. I saw one film a day, and I tried to see all of his films in chronological order.
In a day?
No, one a day.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, throughout the summer.
I thought you said one day.
No, because, I forget how many he's directed, but it took up almost all the summer.
Yeah.
So, and I was one a day. And for some reason, maybe I couldn't get a hold of a good enough copy or whatever, I didn't see Notorious as part of that. Maybe, I don't know why I didn't, but I didn't. And actually, one of the things that it made me aware of is how many things passed me by as a 16-year-old, right? All of the sexual stuff completely passed me by. I read it as, she's a beautiful woman and, sophisticated, and Cary Grant is, like a very elegant spy, and he gets her to work for him, and then he's heartbroken because really, she's got to do this, but it's for the government, so it's okay. I get all of these tensions,
but there's
nuances.
There's actually a point where, fairly explicitly, she says, "I'm sleeping with him."
Well, I know. She says it twice.
Yeah.
But I'm just telling you, it passed me by.
No, yeah. That's
yeah, because I forget what her line is. Something,
he's one of my playmates.
He's one of my
playmates.
Well, I think maybe as a 16-year-old, I thought, oh, well, they're having a good time together. But, the sleeping together and what that means in the narrative, I think, passed me by.
Yeah.
And actually, you can understand why, right? That's the way the censorship of the era operated. Right, kind of to say, he's my playmate. It very strongly hints that they're sleeping together, basically, but it doesn't say so, right? And then by not saying so, it could be read in other ways, by like a 16-year-old.
But I think I agree with what you're saying. What you were getting at just before, where I think you were suggesting that the love that Cary Grant has for her springs up quite quickly. And you don't quite believe it. Certainly not to the same extent that you believe it of Claude Rains. I think that is developed very, very quickly and almost rushed.
No, I wouldn't say that actually, because the thing is that in the first sequence, it's in the first sequence, I did get a sense that he loved her, but in that sense, the way, she's very clear about it and so on, right? Yeah, but, she's a woman with this reputation, right? So I think he's mistrustful of that. And he's not clear in what he's saying. So, there's like the way that people test each other at the beginning of a relationship or something. But you do get a sense that he's got feelings for her, right? And actually there's more. There's, elements of their conversation in which she, that they're both saying and feeling things that the other isn't understanding, but that we as an audience are. So actually you get a feeling that he is jealous,
Oh, yeah.
And so on. So to me it doesn't come as that surprise that you're speaking of. I see that, I think to me the screenplay is almost a perfect one. There are those continuities, throughout, and you can see, and the unfolding makes sense to me.
The screenplay, I think, is the only thing about the film that was nominated for an Oscar.
Right.
And it didn't win any. I'm just going to quickly have a...
It's by Ben Hecht, who is considered one of the great Hollywood screenwriters. That I do know.
Give me a second. I'll just look at the 46 Oscars. Claude Rains was nominated as supporting actor.
Uh-huh.
Notorious was nominated for a screenplay. Ben Hecht, as you say.
I read Ben Hecht's biography, called Gaily Gaily, I think. It was made into a film by the same name. He's a very, very interesting character.
That was it for its Oscar nominations. Go on, Ben Hecht.
I think he started off as a journalist in Chicago. From what I remember, again, it's 30 years since I read this book, but he started off as a journalist in Chicago, and then kind of went on to Hollywood. I think with Charlie MacArthur, they wrote some of the great classic films of the era. And then later on, I think he became like this post-war. He became a massive Zionist. Devoted many of his energies, to establishing and supporting the state of Israel, and that's all I can remember really, about the book. So yeah, and I'd be curious to see the movie. There was a film made of that memoir, so he is kind of like a legendary character. Let me look him up.
Handsome devil. There was a British boycott of his work, it says.
All right, there
he
you go.
He wrote a lot of screenplays anonymously to get around that.
So, Underworld, Scarface, The Front Page, 20th Century, Nothing Sacred, Gunga Din, Wuthering Heights, It's a Wonderful World, Angels Over Broadway. He wrote Spellbound and Notorious, and then Monkey Business for Howard Hawks. Those are just some of the highlights. I mean, there's a lot more. So, one of the most successful screenwriters of the classic era, really.
There's one shot that I picked up on that I don't know if you recognise it at all, or it occurred to you. It did seem to stand out for me, and it wasn't a particularly sort of show-offy shot or anything, but there was just something about it that seemed like artfully framed and composed. That was after Claude Rains has figured out that he's married to an American agent, and he tells his mother. He wakes up his mother, and he's in her room, and she says, "Yeah, I knew it, but I didn't see it. But I see it now. It's easy to see now." There's a shot of Claude Rains sitting on that sort of sofa, divan, whatever, and it's only there for a second, but it's like a Tom Hooper shot, and I don't say that meaning it as an insult, because when Tom Hooper does it, it's a disgrace. But it's almost planimetric. It's kind of straight on, and the sofa is right at the bottom of the frame across it. There's all this white space of the wall above him. And he's just sat in the bottom left-hand corner on the edge of the sofa, and basically the edge of the frame. Do you remember this shot? Mm-hmm. And he looks just sort of lost. He's looking off screen as well. Yes. He looks sort of lost. And
he looks like a little boy. I thought, like a haggard little boy. But yes, I know what you mean.
And he says something like, "I must have been insane. I must have been mad."
Yes.
And I mean that shot, maybe more than any other, kind of conveys to me that I think the real depth of feeling of what his character was feeling. For his wife, and it really struck me because it does sound like I'm insulting the film and the director and the cinematographer by saying that I think so much of the composition being based on close-ups is sort of means that it's not really composition. It's not exactly what I mean, but there was something that stood out in compositional terms about that shot. There was something so deliberate, and the way that the shot is framed and composed is expressive in a way that I think many other shots in the film aren't really trying to do that.
Oh no, I think every shot in this film is expressive and beautifully composed and kind of extraordinary, really. I mean, there are things that we've just seen the film, that I find extraordinarily striking. And I don't quite agree with you about the close-ups. I mean, especially the kissing scenes, they are in close-ups and they're very effective, and so on. But there's a lot of other types of shots. The whole conversation with the mother and the son in the staircase, for example, right, which is so humorous. I mean, the actress who plays the mother in a way steals the show. The audience responded as much to her as anybody else, really. As a comic character, the scenes in the dining room, the very first scene when you're introduced. It's a room full of people, really. And the camera moves across things. But it's Bergman who's in focus. So, I think there's a full array of types of shots that are on display here. Yeah. I think we're just remembering the close-ups because they are so extraordinary in this film. And because, they are also the love scenes. And they're filmed in great close-up, yeah. you're very close to the characters. But you
that
know,
wasn't quite what I was trying to say, but I know what you mean. I mean, I'm certainly not trying to forget or forgetting that there are so many other types of shots. And actually, one of the things that I think is so interesting about the film is that it is so sort of cinematically inventive or playful and expressive, despite being about such small sort of events occurring. Everything, it's not like there's a car chase, there's not an explosion, there's nothing like that. The most dramatic things are close-ups of keys in hands and a bottle falling off a shelf.
I know.
Really small things that are made cinematically sort of tense and expressive and explosive. So I think it's really, really wonderful.
It's an example to filmmakers because,
yes.
In so many films nowadays, you have a million car chases and whatever, and you're just bored out of your mind, right?
The bottle falling off the shelf got a huge response.
I know.
Well, actually, not the falling, but the edging towards the edge of the shelf. People gasped.
Yes.
It was fantastic.
I know. And unlike the Fast and the Furious, where you're really wrecking kind of, half a city and kind of racing through it, and it can be so dull. Like, I mean, it is an example to filmmakers because, there is this sense that for the film to be more exciting, you just have to have more car chases, more action sequences. And actually, hear something like, where is the key, in which hand is the key, creates enormous tension.
And what's she going to do? And things like the bottles of champagne in the icebox, dwindling one by one, like that's your ticking clock.
That's right.
What's going to happen.
And it's not just that, because that then gets transferred. So you notice that there's that scene where they're offering the champagne in the ballroom, and Ingrid Bergman says no thanks, right? Like as if somehow willing the champagne to diminish at a slower rate, right?
And then it becomes they go to get more champagne. He sees there's no key, but that's just for him, that information. He passes it off as, maybe we don't need more champagne, let's just give him a whiskey. And then in the morning, the key's back. And that's all you need, is that close-up on the key and and a very loud, dramatic sting of music. But, and the name on the key, the name of the lock helps you recognise it. Which is a wonderful little sort of little identifier.
It's so, it's so beautifully done. And I love the elusiveness of the film and a kind of a mystery about it, really. So on the one hand, everything is clear, right? I mean, you never feel that you're being left out, or there's information that you require but are not given. But on the other hand, everything is elusive rather than... The elusiveness is clear, but you feel that there are repercussions underneath it, right? That the information that you're given is it's just what you need to feel good about it, right? But if you think there are other layers underneath. So, for example, we mentioned the ending, right? So what you need to know is that she's being poisoned, that Cary Grant kind of saves her, that he finds an intelligent way of saving her, and one that puts Claude Rains in danger, and basically you suspect that as soon as Cary Grant runs off with Ingrid Bergman, Claude Rains will be killed, right? But you're not shown any of it, you see, you have enough information to suspect that all of these things will happen. But actually, the only thing that you see is that the car doors are closed and they go off, right? And then it ends, right? I think even as soon as the motor starts, it ends. You don't even see them going into sunset or anything. Right.
They do drive off because then the camera, I think, tracks in on the front door as he goes back in. Then they're definitely not there anymore when that happens. They've left him only to go back in the house. But did he say at any point, "I'll be killed"? I'm going to quickly just look at this.
I think he does, actually, or he says something like it. Please don't leave me here, he says, and then he might have said, "I'll be killed." But
I think he says. I'm just going to quickly look up. I've got a transcript of the film here. I must sit with her. No room, Sebastian. But you must take me. They're watching me. That's your headache. Please take me, please. That's it.
See?
Yeah.
So it's not explicitly
not as explicit as "I'll be killed."
Yes.
Yeah.
So So those are things that you bring to it, but also other things, that I think are both beautiful and clear, but also mysterious, right? The whole conversation in the bed at the end, in the close-ups, right? Kind of, he's there for her. He comes back for her. He clearly wants to rescue her. They clearly have feelings for each other, But how to make sense, and you get the sense of why she's been absent from the meetings, right? But actually, there's all other kinds of things going on there, that are kind of mysterious, right? That So what is the depth of Cary Grant's feelings for her? I mean, she's been sleeping in another man's bed for the last X amount of time. I mean, does that not matter, right? Like, there are just things that are there, but they're not on your mind at that moment, right? That, like, there's a mystery about them that kind of, that...
I must say, that in particular didn't occur to me as a mystery at that point. I think there were the two elements of that being, the two reasons for that being, that the reason, you're given the reason for him requesting this transfer to Spain.
Yes.
And then that he's requested this transfer to Spain because Prescott says, and then he says to her, I think in that close-up scene, something like, I had to do it because I love you. I had to keep away. I couldn't keep seeing this happen, so on and so forth. And then I think it's basically in that same line of dialogue, I love you.
But what I was referring to...
The clarity of that sort of made that not a mystery to me.
Well, but what I was referring to by mystery there was not plot information, but like...
Well, that is character information. I mean, I think that's what... when you're suggesting that the depth of his love, or the amount of love, or the truth of his love is in question there.
I think that was part of it, but I think there's also something about, that... So to me, kind of one of the things about, like, the greatest art is that, on the one hand, it articulates things for you, it makes things clear, but on the other hand, there's a level in which it's mysterious, the way that it's making things clear. So, in that scene, like, the luminosity, the warmth, there's an element of sexuality, there's all these things that you can't quite put your finger on, but that they're there, right? And that I think is, it's mysterious, right? Like, kind of, there are layers going on in that scene that, you can't quite put your finger on, that have to do with everything about the film. And it's not just the plot point. The plot points leading up to it, you do understand. And if you understand the plot point, the plot is not mysterious. But actually, what the plot is used to hang all other kinds of things on. And many of those other elements, to me, are kind of, there are layers there.
Has anyone been lit like Ingrid Bergman since this film?
Well, let's not give all the credit to the lighting. I mean, she is beautiful.
She is extraordinarily beautiful, but there is... I mean, it's when they say they don't make films like this anymore, they definitely don't seem to shoot actors and actresses like this anymore.
Yes. Certainly they're both shot with great care. As I said, my God, Cary Grant's eyelashes, like, they're to die for, really. And they're shown to you, like, it's not an accident that they're shown, his face is often, the side of his face is often privileged in their two shots. So yeah, I mean, great care is taken with the presentation of stars. They're all given their entrance. It's like she appears, her first appearance is, Ingrid Bergman, but it's Ingrid Bergman as Alicia already, like this notorious woman, right? And likewise with Cary Grant, it's Cary Grant, but, this time he's watching and he's calculating, and
Well, he's introduced as a man of mystery. You don't know who he is at all.
And that's right.
And neither do the other people.
Yeah.
Neither do the characters.
Yeah, but then he turns around and he's Cary Grant. So you like, audiences would have known Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman, and the problem of their first entrance is, well, first of all, a production value. Yeah, wow, here's the star. But also, the functional kind of problem of dramatization, which is, Cary Grant is now playing Devlin, yeah? So you're introducing Cary Grant, but you're introducing Cary Grant as Devlin, as somebody, who is Cary Grant, but also different than the character you saw him play in his previous movie. So, and the film does that marvelously. But my God, yes. I mean, the way that Ingrid Bergman is dressed, the jewels. I mean, and to be fair also, the cut of Cary Grant's kind of suit, right, in the writing sequence, I mean, it's magnificent, It's like he's so, his body is put on display without being shown, right? Just through the cut of that incredible suit. It's, all having to do with the presentation of, the leading players is sublime in this film. Hitchcock knew the value of stars, right? Like, I think he barely made a film without one. I can't remember a film without one. So, I mean, Grace Kelly, James Stewart, Henry Fonda, I mean, Julie Andrews, Paul Newman, Doris Day, right? He worked with stars and he knew how to use them to best effect, really. And this is an example of that. I mean, it's just a sublime experience to watch Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman. If the film offered you nothing more, it would be worth seeing it, just for those scenes, just for those close-ups with them, really. So, some people consider it Hitchcock's best film.
Well, good for them.
Yeah. It's a great, great, great movie.
It's really good.
It's a beautiful restoration. And actually, one of the things that I admired about it is it gave full scope to grey. So it isn't a very contrasty film. It's like you get all the deep kind of, all the variations of grey, but also with a kind of a depth to the image, to the types of greys that you see. It's it's very, very beautiful to see. So, thank you very much for listening. We are Eavesdropping at the Movies, and we are on
iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter. The website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com. Cheerio.